Welcome back. It is Friday again. Thank goodness for that. Man, what a week it has been. So I thought we'd keep it a little bit low key this week and do something a little bit different. So let's get into it. It's been a busy week. Personally, I got my first COVID shot, so I am halfway to vaccinated, which is amazing for me, especially somebody being in the high risk category. Man, if you are contemplating your decision to get the vaccine, the only thing I can say, you may have seen what I said earlier on social media, earlier this week on social media. Understand our history, understand how we got here, understand how vaccines came to the Western world. As you are contemplating your decision, just keep this in mind. Anybody who's telling you not to get a vaccine, telling you some conspiracy theory or other theory related to the vaccine, is probably a lie today because somebody took the time to make sure that they got vaccinated for things like measles, mumps, rubella, which is German measles, tuberculosis, polio, and a host of other things. So all those folks are alive because of vaccines in one way, shape, or form. So I would just say keep that in mind as you make your personal decision. But I'm grateful that I am 50% complete on my way to vaccination. So that's my plug for COVID-19 and the vaccination, and I'll leave it right there. What else happened this week? So Tournament of Champions, I got to give you my update. My number one, Chef Antonia, she won her first round battle. I feel like anytime you up first in a competition, you're always going to get the worst judges' scores. Like, I feel like her plate was absolutely phenomenal, but she only won by like 2 points. And to me, it wasn't even that close. Obviously, I'm a little biased, she being one of my favorite chefs. But I didn't feel like it was that close. But the more and more I watch it, the more and more I'm thinking, maybe, just maybe we ought to do something like that in Columbus. So if you're out there, if you're watching, throw in the comments your favorite restaurant, your favorite chef, your favorite caterer. If you were building a bracket, who's somebody you would put in from Columbus and surrounding area that you would want to compete in a head-to-head cooking battle? You never know what might happen. Maybe we'll have something like that when COVID's over. You never know what we're planning over here between Columbus Black and Sulli's Kitchen. So we could do anything in the world. We might put something like that together. So very excited about what that's going to look like. I hope she continues to make it. She's my pick to win. Also, because he reps Columbus, got to make sure we shout out Darnell Ferguson, aka Super Chef. He won his opening round battle as well. It was not close. It shouldn't have been close. He was absolutely killing it. And so I'm glad to see him advance as well. I love seeing that there's more and more diversity on the show. Obviously, this is the second time they've done this tournament. So just really, really excited to see where this continues to go. But I wanted to keep it super low key this week. And I wanted to do something that was a little easy, paid a little respect to spring. But that really was just kind of calm. We had an awesome show last week. We did wings. I got to talk to my partner, Robert Chenault of Midnight Oil Designs, who I see is also out there with us today. So thanks for coming back, Rob, and family. Just wanted to do something low key today. So it's spring, and shoot, next week will be April. Can you believe that? Like we're about to hit April, which is just crazy to me. But one of the best parts about spring, especially early spring, is that we are right in the start of peak strawberry season. So I was thinking about what we were going to do this week. Like I said, I wanted it to be simple. I'm not a huge baker. It's not that I can't, but baking requires a certain finesse and a certain fine measurement that I don't always like to apply because my attention span is not always that long. But I thought we might make a cake today. So we are going to make my strawberry lemonade upside down cake. Now that's a super complicated name. Essentially what we're going to do is make a strawberry upside down cake. But we're going to add some fresh squeezed lemon, some zest to our cake batter to give it that really floral lemony scent and taste as we build our cake. So I say we jump right in. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. I am making this cake in a cast iron skillet, and it's hard to explain why until you experience a cake made in a cast iron skillet. So I'm going to ask you to trust me. If you decide to go back and make this, if you're trying to follow along, trust me. If you have a cast iron skillet, a 10-inch cast iron skillet, make this cake in your cast iron skillet. It is absolutely life-changing. What that does to something like an upside down cake in terms of crust and texture and all that good stuff. So I got the oven preheating to 350. It's already warmed up. We can literally start building. I've got the KitchenAid out. We're going to use this a few times today, but let's get started. So the first thing we have to do is build a base for our cake. And let me grab my circle here. And thankfully, that's why there are two sides to it. But I've got my cast iron skillet here. 10-inch round, and what I did was took a piece of parchment paper, just traced around the pan and made a nice circle so that I can put this in the bottom of my pan. The reason that I'm doing it, you can totally do this without, but your cake isn't going to come out as clean because we're doing an upside down cake. So I got a parchment round in my skillet, and the next thing we need to do is build a base that will allow the butter, the sugar, and everything to take hold of the strawberries and turn it into a cake. So I've got a half a stick of butter that has been sitting out long enough that it is super soft because we want this to cream as easily as possible. And creaming just means we mix the butter and the sugar. And so all the sugar is incorporated in the butter. So we've got that, and we've got a cup of sugar here. So I'm going to dump that in the KitchenAid. We'll raise this up. And always, if you're using a KitchenAid, if you're using a stand mixer, don't just jump to high speed. Start off low, let the ingredients incorporate together, and then we can increase speed. So here we go. So the butter's soft enough that it's picking up the sugar, it's breaking down into pieces. It's starting to incorporate. And when I see about half the sugar is incorporated into the butter, I can go ahead and go up a little faster. And wait for all of that sugar to be combined. Now, it's real easy to get excited and say, oh, it's pretty much combined, it's crumbly. We don't want crumbly. We want this all mixed together with all of the sugar evaporated or combined into the butter there. So we'll let that go. And what we are left with when we drop this out, and I'll show you, I'll use the handle here. What we're left is this really fine, fluffy butter and sugar mixture. And I'm just going to push this. I don't want to waste any of it, so I'm going to get all of it off with my spatula that I can. And we're going to dump that right onto our parchment paper. And this is setting up a nice base. So if we didn't put this base down, essentially what would happen is all the sugar from our strawberries would come out and effectively soak into the cake. So by adding this extra moisture, what we're doing is allowing the strawberries to still give off their juice, but not get totally absorbed into our cake. So we end up with this sticky, beautiful, gooey top of the cake when it comes out. So I'm gonna get the rest of this out of the bowl. Fold this in. And we've got a big pile there. Now, I will tell you, if you are not a mess person, if you are not a hands-on, you prefer to use a spatula, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not either. But you're going to have to get your hands dirty for this one. As you can see, my KitchenAid has decided it doesn't want to cooperate. We'll come back to that. We'll leave that there for now. So I'm going to use my hands. I did wash them before our show. Got to wash your hands. All right, so I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to press it out against the parchment and push it out as much as the butter mixture will allow. I don't have to cover every square inch of the parchment. It's not going to hurt anything. Push that out. Some indentations in there won't hurt a thing. And so now if I pick up our round, you can see we pretty much got the whole round covered with our butter and sugar mixture. So we'll lay that out there back into our skillet. We will rinse off our hands. Make sure we get any excess off. We don't want to waste that. We just took the time to make all of that. Let's rinse off our hands. And let's get into our next step. So I've got a cup and a half of fresh cut strawberries. Because the strawberries I got were so large, I actually cut them into quarters. If yours are smaller, you can cut them into halves. That's totally okay too. But rinse them off, quarter them, and right into the skillet they go. And then you can use a spatula, you can use your hands, but essentially I want to make sure all of these lay down into a nice even layer. And I just saw a comment. Tasha, I'm glad you like the shirt. You know, as always, when we post the pictures after, I'll try and make sure I get a picture of it, and I'll tag the designer. It's from a company called the Hot brand, like Hot Couture. They make some pretty awesome stuff. So I'm a huge fan of kente cloth and the story and meaning behind kente cloth, and you know how every pattern tells a story. So I absolutely love this shirt. First time I got to wear it was today. So I got all my strawberries laid down into a pretty nice layer, and it's okay to push them down into the butter because all the stuff's going to soak together anyway. One thing I forgot, and this is my miss, but I want to make sure we catch it. My cast iron skillet is seasoned pretty well that nothing will stick to the edges. But if yours is not, take the other half a stick of butter that we haven't used yet and make sure you just run it around the edges so that the edges of the cake release better. And if yours has little grooves on the side for pouring, make sure you get those as well. And we'll end up using the rest of the stick, but we're not going to hurt anything by using just a little bit along the sides of the pan here. So we've got our base down. Now we've got to start making our cake. So let's get this KitchenAid to cooperate now and get our bowl back in place. There we go. And we're going to use this bowl as is for our wet ingredients. We're not going to waste the butter and sugar that's still lingering on the pan there. But we've also got another pan for our dry, or another bowl for our dry ingredients that we'll be making use of here in just a second. Let's make sure that's secure. There we go. Got that on there. And let's get to our wet ingredients. So for our wet ingredients, pretty straightforward. Let me get my screen up. So I make sure we go in the not the order in my head, but the order that's most effective for the recipe. But into the bowl, we need to melt some butter. We're also going to put some milk and we're going to put some eggs. So let's grab a measuring cup. And we need 1/3 cup of milk. Now, you can use whatever milk you want. You can even use heavy cream. We need 1/3 cup total. I don't necessarily always buy whole milk just because I don't want it to go to waste. So I'm going to use 1%. Sometimes I'll use 1% and I'll leave it a little short and I'll bump up the rest with heavy cream. Use whatever you have. Use whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, honestly, with this recipe, you could even use almond flour and almond milk to make this cake if you wanted to. Use whatever you're comfortable with. You got my milk here. And I'm just going to go, I need about 1/3. So I'm going to have to eyeball it here. If I go a little over, that's okay. Just under 1/2 cup. We'll put our milk away. And then the reason I put the milk in first is because I've got to melt this butter. But if you've ever tried to melt butter in the microwave really quickly, you know that if you don't put anything with it, the butter tends to kind of explode everywhere. And we don't want that. So I'm going to show you 2 tricks. One is to add the milk and the butter because they're all going to go into the pool together. So let's get this unwrapped. The other is not to throw away the wax paper that the butter comes with. So we're going to go straight to the microwave with this, but we're going to put the measuring cup in. We're going to put the wax paper over. So this is going to create a seal that will keep the butter, if it does pop, it's going to keep it from popping and going all over the microwave and us losing butter. So into the microwave. I've still got a cover for safety purposes, and we'll put that in there for a minute. while that's working, let's go ahead and start our dry ingredients. So in this container here, I've got 2 cups of flour. Now, let's talk about our flour. I told you you can use almond flour, which makes this a gluten-free cake. I have a cup of all-purpose flour or AP flour, and I have a cup of cake flour. It honestly depends on what kind of wow, I just lost my words there for a second. What kind of density and texture you want for your cake? I prefer a little mixed. If I used all AP flour, cake would be a little more dense, a little more heavy. If I used all cake flour for an upside down cake, it might be really nice. It'll be super light, it'll be super fluffy. But I want a combination somewhere in between. And then on the back side, I've got a teaspoon of baking powder. You gotta have baking powder in your cake, and a teaspoon of kosher salt. So I'm gonna put all of this into the pan. Make sure you get it all in there. We'll set that off to the side. And then I'm just gonna give it a quick twirl just to make sure all those ingredients combine and mix. Now, when you're doing flour for a cake, if you're not sure, if you've never used this method before, I want to make sure you know what you're doing. But we don't just throw the measuring cup into the flour. Essentially, what happens, we grab our flour, and let's say that this small container is our measuring cup. I'm going to take my flour and spoon it into the container to get the amount that I want. What you're doing is, because we're not sifting the flour, you're letting air into it. We don't want to pack it down, because you can pack down a cup of flour and it's actually like a cup and a half of flour pounded down into the cup. So we want to make sure that we spoon it into our container. We use the back of the spoon or the knife to level it off, and that's how we get our cup. Now, if you have a sifter, like back in the day, my mom has one, I've got one around here somewhere, you can just dump all your flour in and sift it out until you get a cup or 2 cups of flour. So like I said, I've got a cup of all-purpose flour, and I've got a cup of cake flour as well in mine. You can use whatever flour you prefer. Just need to make sure you have 2 cups of flour. Make sure that you have a teaspoon of baking powder and a teaspoon of kosher salt. Now to that, we're going to add 1 cup of white sugar. If this was a fall cake, if we were making like an apple upside down cake, an apple upside down walnut cake, like the one on my recipe, the method's the same, but I'd probably use brown sugar instead to give it a more rich type of fall texture and color as well. So got my sugar in here. We'll get that worked around. And my microwave is yelling at me that my butter is ready. So let's set our dry ingredients off to the side. Let's grab this. And my paper went down, but that's okay. You can see we didn't have any spills. We've got all our butter and we've got our milk there. And we're going to go right into our mixing bowl with that. The other reason we put the milk in is it breaks up the viscosity of the butter fat. So it pours out nice and even. You don't lose too much butter by putting it in the microwave and melting it. So to this, we need to add 3 eggs. So we'll do each one of those. Make sure we don't get any shells in there. So be really careful when you're cracking your egg. If you need to crack it on a flat surface, that's totally okay too. We'll do that. 2 eggs. There we go. And our 3rd egg into the mix. All right, so for now, we'll just wipe off the fingers. We'll wash our hands in a second. All right, so we're locked and loaded. We're gonna start off low. Wait till we start to see bubbles start to pop up in our mix, and then we'll turn up the heat turn up the speed for just a couple of seconds. So the eggs are breaking up. The milk is making it frothy, starting to see those bubbles form. I can kick it up a little bit because now my egg yolks are all broken and they're starting to incorporate. And go up a little higher. And I don't want to go up too much higher than that because the bowl is telling me, hey, if you go up too much higher, the stuff's going to start coming out of the side. So I'm going to let it go here until I can't see any more egg yolk in the wet ingredients. I want to make sure all that egg yolk is fully incorporated. So I'm looking, I've got this nice golden yellow batter here. And we'll ease that down and we'll let it settle. And that looks good. Now, I told you this was a strawberry lemonade upside down cake. So I've got 2 limes here, or 2 lemons, excuse me. I am having a day. I told you I was glad it was Friday. Let's grab my knife. We want the juice from 2 of these lemons. So we could slice these, squeeze them, make sure we don't get any seeds in there, and it would be all great. However, I don't like to use that bottle stuff, so I always have fresh squeezed lemon juice in the refrigerator. Mind the date, I just forgot to update my tape on there. This is just from about a week or so ago. I want about 1/3 of a cup, which is the same amount of juice as you would get from 2 nice sized lemons. If you're going to use fresh lemon, just make sure you roll it out on the counter. Let that flesh break up, let the juice get loose. So when you slice it and squeeze it, you're getting the maximum amount of juice and not wasting the lemon. And also make sure if you got seeds, make sure they don't end up in your cake batter as well. So I'm going to add about 1/3 cup of lemon juice here. There we go. And if you want more of a lemon taste, you can add a little more. I wouldn't add too much more than 1/2 cup though. And we'll give this another quick run just to incorporate the lemon juice into the rest of the wet ingredients. Let that work together. All right, we are good there. Now, before we add our dry ingredients, we need to add one more thing. So I've got my microplane out. You may remember that from one of our previous workshops. I'm going to avoid the sticker there, but I'm just going to microplane some zest into my dry ingredients. And I'm going to take probably the yellow of most of this lemon. Obviously, I'm going to avoid the area with the sticker on it. Pull that off here in just a second. But this is what's going to give us that lemony aroma, that extra lemony flavor, even beyond what the juice will give. Just make sure that you avoid going too deep on the lemon and getting in any of the white part that would be under here, which is called the pith. That's going to make things bitter. It's going to make things not really taste too great if they end up in your cake. So you can put as much or as little as you want. And I'm only going to do 1 lemon because when we're all done, we're going to save some to garnish as well. So I've got the zest of about 3/4 of a lemon, and I'm just going to fold that into my wet ingredients. And you can already smell that lemony aroma in our dry ingredients. So to get this all incorporated, I'm going to start my mixer on low. And all we're going to do is pour in a small amount of our dry ingredients. And before I do anything else, I just want to see all of that get fully incorporated. Now, don't get nervous. It's going to look lumpy. It's going to look like, I don't know if this is going to come together right, but that's okay. Once you see all of that incorporated, go ahead and throw a little bit more in there. Let that incorporate. You'll start to see your batter come together. And then once you see your batter starting to thicken up, go ahead and let's add the rest of our dry ingredients. Now that we've got all that in there, we need to kick this up. So we go up a couple notches on our speed because we want all this to incorporate. And we want the lumps to get beaten out of our batter. We don't want any lumps. Lumps turn into dense spots. They turn into air pockets. We don't want that. So I'm going to keep increasing speed until I look at my batter and I don't see any lumps anymore. All right, there we go. So pretty smooth. And we've got one more ingredient that we want to add. And we could have added this with the wet ingredients. I just forgot to, but we're still fine to add it now. That is a teaspoon or more. I really like it. You can use more. Teaspoon of vanilla bean paste. Now, if you've ever done a class with Iomine and myself, you might have heard us talk about why vanilla bean paste instead of vanilla extract. Honestly, it comes down to preference. To make vanilla extract, essentially you can use any neutral spirit alcohol and you soak vanilla pods in it and you get the flavor of vanilla. But to make vanilla paste, you're actually crushing vanilla pods and vanilla seeds, and it turns into this syrupy mixture. So if you look at the spoon, let me get in real close on the inside of that spoon there. All those little dots, those are all vanilla beans that are inside the vanilla bean paste. So to me, you get a better flavor, you get a better texture when you use vanilla bean paste. So I put a teaspoon in here. Excuse me. I wouldn't go more than 2 teaspoons because we want the star of this to be the lemon. So I wouldn't go too much past a tablespoon and a half, 2 teaspoons. I'm sorry, a teaspoon and a half. 2 teaspoons would be the max that I would do. And I'm just going to let this spin until I see those little flecks, those really expensive, beautiful flecks of vanilla all through my batter. Now, vanilla bean paste is more expensive than vanilla extract, and you do use them at a 1-to-1 ratio. But to me, it's a better product. It's something you'll like more. You'll get more flavor out of it. And it's really beautiful when you see those vanilla beans in your finished product, whether that's a cake, a cheesecake, a drink recipe, anything like that. I prefer the sight, smell, and taste of vanilla bean paste over vanilla extract, which is why I use it. If you're not sure where to find it, most grocery stores carry it, but if you don't find it, there's actually a link out on my website in what it's called What's in My Kitchen, where I tell you what products I'm using, and that's one that you can actually go out and find. You find the exact same one that I'm using right now. So I see it incorporated. I'm going to kick this speed up just a little bit more, just to make sure I don't have any lumps. And then I'm going to shut it off. This looks absolutely beautiful. I'm going to show you what it looks like here. You're going to see all the mess that I made with the flour as well. Let's twist that there. We'll get that out. And we've got this custardy, delicious batter. Let me set this in my mixing bowl over here. Pop this off and bring our skillet over. And we're going to go right into our skillet. Now, we have to be careful. We don't want to overfill this because when those strawberries start releasing their juice, this could easily bubble over in the oven. So I would say put it on a rack, put something underneath it, but definitely try not to overfill. So I like to get about 2/3 of the batter in there, and I'll use a little gravity. I'll shake it, use my spatula, make sure all the strawberries get covered. And I want to come up about 2/3 of the way. So if I look at my batter and see, okay, I still got a little room, which I do, then I'll come back and add some more batter to my cake. We'll put a little more in here. And if you got excess batter, I encourage you to do what my mom always did. She grabbed a muffin tin, greased it up, and she poured the rest of the batter into the muffin tin. And that was our snack, because usually she was making a cake for somebody else. So what went into the muffin tins was ours. So if you got extra batter, throw it in those muffin tins. Top them with a strawberry if you got some left over, and you are good to go. All right, so here's our cake. Strawberries are completely covered. We've got everything done here. Let's throw this in the oven. Now, that's going to bake in a 350-degree oven for about 50 to 60 minutes. Essentially, same rule as always. You know, some things don't change. If you stick a toothpick in it and the toothpick comes out clean, it's done. If the toothpick doesn't come out clean, it's not ready yet. I'm going to set this excess batter to the side because we've still got one more thing that we've got to make. We've got to wash out our mixing bowl in order to do that. So let's get that batter off to the side. And honestly, I may end up baking it in this ramekin and seeing how it turns out. That's the best part about cooking is all about the experimentation piece. So let's take a pause. I'm gonna wash out my mixing bowl, dry it out, and then we'll come back and we'll make the special surprise that goes with this cake that we're gonna finish up here in just a few minutes. All right, this is when you wish you had one of those TV assistants who could come and dry everything out for you. All right, let's see here. We got our bowl clean, our spatula's clean off to the side. I'm gonna grab that and dry it as well. And let's get to our surprise. Now, first time I made this surprise part of this recipe or this dessert item, I thought it was going to be super hard. And it turned out I was making it harder on myself than it is. So how many of you have this in your refrigerator? I've got it. Everybody loves it. I like to do whippets straight, straight from the can to the mouth. But I want to talk about ready whip and whipped cream in a canister and whatnot. It used to be that when you read one of these, cream was like the last ingredient if it was on here at all. Now, because of regulation and requirements, heavy cream is the first ingredient, but there's heavy cream, water, sugar, corn syrup, non-fat milk, less than 2% of mono and diglycerides, natural flavor. If somebody can tell me what natural flavor tastes like, I would love to know it. Carrageenan, and then it has nitrous oxide as a propellant. It's delicious. I will probably do a whip it with it before this night is over, but we can do better. So we're gonna make whipped cream and we're gonna use 3 ingredients, all right? So first thing we gotta do is make sure our bowl is clean. Now, in a perfect world, I would have had this bowl in the freezer for like at least 2 hours, maybe even a whole day. But as it stands, I've got my whisk in the freezer. I've also got my cream in the freezer. And because I plan to cut up this cake, divide it up, and take it over to folks who might need a happy surprise this evening, I want to make sure that I've got enough. So I'm actually going to make a double batch of whipped cream. So we're going to use 2 cups of whipped cream, 16 ounces of heavy cream. And you can use cream, you can use heavy cream. All that means is how much milk fat is in it. Heavy cream has about 36% or higher fat content to it, so it whips easier. We're going to use 2 tablespoons of confectioner sugar, and we're going to use another teaspoon of our vanilla bean paste. So let's get our ingredients ready. And so I've had this heavy cream in the freezer for about the last hour. The colder it is, the easier it's going to whip. Let me grab my tablespoon here. And I've got my confectioner sugar. Essentially, I'm saving all the cold ingredients until last because I want them to be as cold as possible when we start whipping. So I've got 2 tablespoons of confectioner sugar. Confectioner sugar is just granulated sugar and cornstarch that's been grinded down into a powder. And the cornstarch helps to thicken and stiffen things as cornstarch does. But that's all confectioner sugar is. If you didn't have confectioner sugar, you could use the exact same amount of granulated sugar. It might have a slightly firmer texture because you're going to taste the granules a little more, but it won't hurt a thing there as well. So let's get our teaspoon of vanilla bean paste here. We'll throw that in. All right. And now let's get our cream into the bowl. And just as quickly, I'm going to grab my whisk out of the freezer and we're gonna let the KitchenAid do its thing. You can totally do this by hand. If you've ever been to culinary school, I think they make you do it by hand. I used to do it by hand. I don't need to do that. I'm not trying to show off. We're trying to enjoy this cooking experience. So let's just make sure all of your ingredients are as cold as possible. And if possible, make sure that that whisk is super cold. So the whisk, I actually leave in my freezer. So it's been in there for like 2 months. So it's super cold. We got all that there. Here's my whisk attachment, and I'm going to be really careful not to touch the tines because as you can see, they are ice cold right now, which is what I want. All right, so we raise our bowl up. We're going to start slow. We're going to wait until we see bubbles. Then we're going to kick it up to about medium speed, and you'll start to see the texture of the cream change into a whipped cream. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That's the fun of cooking. Let's get to work. So the bubbles are starting to form. The confectioner sugar and the vanilla are being spread out. And let's go ahead and kick this up. And it's going to take a couple of minutes. So don't think after 30 seconds, oh my God, it didn't work. It's going to take a couple seconds. So let it come together. So we got more bubbles forming. This is working, it's moving. Let's kick it up a little more. And by using a whisk, we're aerating. In other words, we're adding air to the cream. So those molecules, as they're super cold, as we're whipping that cornstarch, that cream, and that fat together, basically like, okay, we better stick together. And that's how you end up with whipped cream. And obviously the vanilla bean's gonna add some flavor and some sweetness for us there as well. It's starting to get there. And essentially you'll know you're on the right track when you start to be able to see the lines of the whisk and how they've changed, and you can start to see the trails in the cream. So we'll let this go for a couple of minutes. This is when you turn on your favorite song, you just let it dance, and you thank yourself because you don't have to do it by hand if you got a mixer or a KitchenAid. You can totally do this with the stand mixer. Just make sure you put your tongs, your equipment, your whisk. Make sure you put those in the freezer so they can get nice and cold as well. And while this is doing its thing, it's a great time to wipe down, clean up, do all that fun stuff. We forgot to ask our trusty assistant to set a timer. So that cake's been in there about 10 minutes or so. So we'll ask Alexa to set a 10-minute timer for us. So Alexa, set a 10-minute timer or a 50-minute timer. She didn't like that. Alexa, set a 50-minute timer. All right, starting to come together, starting to see trails in the cream. And at this point, we don't touch it. We let it keep going until we start to see the cream move as a whole. What we're looking for is soft peaks. In other words, I should be able to take the whisk off, turn it upside down, and it make like the Dairy Queen swoop on the top and just stay there. And if we do it right, it'll stay at that soft peak for around 10 minutes or so. And the cream's gonna hold together no matter what, but that soft peak, that little loop, if we did it right, it'll stand up for a considerable amount of time. We don't wanna go too far past that point because at that point it becomes butter. And we're not trying to make butter, we're trying to make whipped cream. So we're doing pretty good, let's check it. So to check it, we cut our speed, we drop the bowl down, and I can tell you, we've got a little more work to do on this one, but let's check it. So essentially, I dip it in there. I pull my tongs out. See how this is still a little too creamy? We're not there yet, but we're almost there. So let's put our attachment back on. Let's kick it back up. Yep. Forgot to raise the bowl. There we go. Let's get it back up to high. And let's keep going. And this can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, which is why if the bowl is cold, it'll happen even faster, which is why I like to make sure that my bowl and my whisk and my cream are really, really cold and that they had time in the freezer, because the colder they are, the quicker that reaction happens, the quicker you're going to see this cream stiffen up. So we'll let it go for about another 15 seconds or so. And let's check it again. And we will keep checking this until it's to the consistency that we want. So we'll let it whip for 1 to 2 minutes. You can see we're already getting closer. See how that peak is sideways? We're almost there. So at this point, we'll whip it for another 2 to 3 minutes at a time. And we should be almost there. And we don't want to whip this slowly. We want to do it quickly so that air gets in there and it gets trapped. That's what makes the whipped cream fluffy. That's what does the nitrous oxide does in the can. It makes it super fluffy because it's forcing that air in it and it gets trapped. And that's how you get those peaks. And we are, I think we're there. Let's check this. I think we are there. Let's get a good dip. All right. See, that's not going anywhere. See, it's just stuck to the whisk. That's perfect. All right. So we are good there. Now, here's the best part. When you're the cook, you can totally steal your own taste of whipped cream right there. So our cake needs to bake a little bit longer, but because I love all of you, I was prepared. So let's show you what our finished cake looks like. So this is our strawberry lemonade upside down cake, but we are not done. Remember, I saved the lemon, right? I'm gonna do a couple of things here. I'm gonna use one of these containers that I already had, and I'm gonna zest this lemon because I'm gonna capture all of it. I'm gonna capture as much of this zest as I can. Remember, we don't want to get the pith. We don't want to get the white part. So if you start to see white flecks in your zest, you went too deep. Back off that spot, choose a new spot, and make sure you're just getting the vibrant yellow color of the zest. Let me slide this over so you can see. And we don't need a lot. Zest is strong for a reason, so we don't need a ton. There we go. Got a little left on the other lemon that we had. Got that there. Got a good amount of zest on the bottom of our microplane. We'll toss that in the bowl as well. And we are good to go. So I'm just going to take little bits of this and I'm going to sprinkle it across the top of the cake. Like I said, don't need a ton. This is more for decoration and to heighten that lemon flavor, but man, is it good. Almost wish I had another device so I could take a picture of it and you can see how beautiful it was up close and personal like. Don't you ever wish like you're using your phone, you got your recipe up, you got your screen up, and you wish you had another device so you could take a picture of it? So I'm gonna set that right there. There we go. Make sure you can see it. I'm gonna rinse my hands off. And we are going to cut our cake. Get a plate. I'm not too proud. I'm going to use the paring knife I had earlier. Now, I made this cake earlier, and when it comes out of the oven, you want to make sure you let it rest for at least 30 minutes, just to give it a chance to fully cool before you try to take it out of the pan. So let it rest about 30 minutes. But this crust that using a cast iron skillet gives you is just lights out. We got a piece of our cake here. Pull that out. Oh, so perfect. Look how perfect that came out. We've got that. We'll grab our spatula. You can go on the top. I like to go on the side. Oh, we're going to need more than that. This is good whipped cream. Going to need more than that. Don't be afraid to use your finger there. Push it down. You can use the spatula to smooth it out. Take a little bit more of that lemon zest right on top of the whipped cream. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to spring. I want to show you this cake. Look at that. Look at how beautiful and golden we made this cake here. Beautiful. And the cast iron, that's the crust it gives you on the back, so you get a different texture. You get that crispiness. The strawberries have released all their juices. They baked in. We've got our homemade whipped cream. You can see the little vanilla bean flecks in there. And we've got the lemon zest on top. This smells amazing. I'm going to grab a fork. I'm going to set this right here so you all can catch any screenshots, any last images that you want to check out. Let's get that fork and let's go into it. Absolutely delicious. Make this for somebody. Get your vaccine so you can be around your people. Make this for them. Let them know how much you missed them. This might be my favorite episode yet, y'all. Thank you for joining me tonight. This was absolutely incredible. Thank you for spending your Friday with me. For those of you that return, thank you so much again. To our host, ColumbusBlack.com. Make sure you hit the website, sign up for the mailing list. Make sure you download the Mile app, the Make Your Life Entertaining app, in the App Store and your Google Play Store as well for our Android watchers. And make sure you're following us on social media, ColumbusBlack.com on Facebook, Sulli's Kitchen on Facebook, ColumbusBlack.com on Instagram, and Sulli's.kitchen on Instagram and Twitter. Been a pleasure hanging out with you. It's still daylight. Go make this cake, put it in the oven, enjoy the rest of the daylight. And when it gets dark, sit down and have a